Well, hello there, humans, hippies, earthlings, whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you're doing, and if you're lucky enough indeed to be doing it too. I'm Bushka Blitz, and today I'm going to be having a look at a tank that I've never driven before. Now, I know it's been around for a wee while. I never got to drive it. I don't know why. I cannot actually remember why I never got a hold of this tank, but I never did. And I always wanted to because, look, I'm a sucker for a sweet-looking tank. And this tank looks really, really cool. It's a cross between the Chieftain and an M48 Patton, the T95 Chieftain. And it's billed as having this great gun that's on the move and firepower and gun depression and elevation, and it kind of does. I drove it for an hour and a half today, and I really enjoyed it. It reminds me of so many other good Tier 8 meds. Decent gun depression, low end alpha, fairly good gun, very good aim time. It's exactly as it's built. And, you've got your Indians, your Centurions, your Panthers, your STA-1s. All these tanks have very, very similar characteristics. And this tank falls right in that kind of bracket. It's low end DPM, there's no denying that. But it's certainly got a certain je ne sais quoi, which is French for, geez, it's got a great set of legs on it. It really does look nice. And there is something to be said when you can drive around in an American tank with a American Freedom Eagle on the bonnet, on the hatch, and it's coloured pumpkin. I mean, it is quintessentially Yankee Doodle Dandy. It is absolutely 100% Seppo, and I love it for that. It's ballsy, it's brassy, it's out there, and it engages me. The look of it aesthetically engages me. It's a lot of gold for this tank. I really was surprised at how much gold this thing costs, because that is a lot of cash to be spending on a vehicle that's a premium tank and isn't what I would call overpowered. A lot of people love premium tanks that are outstanding to drive because they're really, really good and they have better characteristics than the other tanks, and they're very, very svelte to the eyeball and to the power gamer. That's not this tank. This tank is all about engaging because you love the feel of it. And that's cool too. I don't think it's worth the cash, but for all that, I had a ball driving it. I had a really good time driving it. There is inside all of us that imaginary human, the young kid who just wants to use the brain to immerse himself in whatever storyline he's reading in a book or watching on a movie or playing in a video game. And I think that's one of the reasons why tanks like this still appeal, even though they are quite obviously not what you drive if you had to play for your life. You don't want to always drive what you drive if you were playing for your life. I mean, you'd probably be better off in a Lerva or an FV4201 or a Black Prince or a Dracula or a Helsing or something like that. But I look at this tank and it reminds me of the character Oddball out of, the bloody old war movies. You've got, Positive Waves, man. And it reminds me of those kind of tanks. It certainly looks a lot like them. So let's talk about the performance of the tank itself. Well, it moves fairly well. It's not outstanding in any way, shape or form in terms of mobility. It's fairly good. Not amazing, but fairly good. Its armor, well, it's got some glaring weak points. I mean, that much should be obvious. The top of the tank is not particularly special. You can see you have what can best be termed a humerus sticking out the top next to your eagle, and that means that you're going to cop a little bit of a flogging when it comes to going hull down, which is something you need to do a lot of because you've got 9 degrees of gun depression. But the rest of the turret is actually pretty solid. You can get a fair amount of play running this as a hull down machine. It's got about 189 millimeters and it's all sloped and red all over the top if you're looking at it with same tier Russian medium, for instance. But that big hatch is going to run at 125 millimeters. Now, 125 millimeters isn't really going to stop anyone. But you're a medium tank. You're not a Chieftain T95, so you can move backwards and forwards fairly quickly. The upper glacis runs up towards the high 100s, 170s, 180s, in some parts 190. And you want to be careful though. You've got that typical wafer thin 50mm sides, which are ugly, and your lower glacis is ugly as well. It's also a weird kind of triangular wedge shape. The back of the tank is higher than the front of the tank, so it kind of slopes downhill, which makes it a lot better for, it turns that 9 degrees of gun depression into, it feels more like 10 or even 11 degrees of gun depression, because the lower glacis, the upper glacis slopes so steeply away from the tank. If you don't know what I mean, look at it side on when you're driving it or next to it or in Armor Inspector, and you'll understand exactly where I'm coming from. The turret is massive. It's like got a head on it like a racing tadpole. The turret feels even bigger than like an M103 turret. It's not, but it just stands out so much because the rest of the tank is so svelte and so low to the ground. How do you play the tank to succeed? Well, a couple of things about it straight away. The penetration on the AP rounds is only 180 millimeters, and you can't really afford to bang that up too much because your DPM is quite low. For comparison's sake, if you take out a Panther 2, you've got about 200 more DPM. If you run out there with, say, an Indian, you've got maybe another 200 DPM on top. You get the idea. You're certainly not outside the bracket, but you're on the low end of the scale. 180 millimeters of pen will get through same tier opponents, no problems. And it's your heat pen that actually does pretty well, unless you're, firing into the sides of tanks. So I changed to AP to hit the lower tracks, and then a dispersion kills me and it doesn't work, and he gets away with it. But your heat pen is 268 millimeters, nearly 270 millimeters of heat pen. And that's a lot of heat pen. That's actually very, very handy for a tier 8 medium to roll. You want to be using the tank as kind of a hull-down flanker. You don't really want to be brawling too much, but when you do, try and face hug opposing mediums. Get up close and personal. Not many mediums at this tier don't have 8 degrees of gun depression or better. Your T44s have 7. Your Type 59s have 8. There's a lot of those gun depression mediums, but you can see the gun really does exactly what it says it does in the box. Wargaming pumped it up as a hard-hitting gun with great elevation and gun depression, and that's all very, very true. And it means that your effective firepower is actually pretty freaking good. You have 20 degrees of gun elevation, which is just the same as a Panther. But it'd be nice to have a little bit more armor on that hatch. I feel that Wargaming overdoes this hatch thing. The T110E5, the T110E3, the M4801 Patton, they were all tanks at tier 10 that had those hatches, and they were rightly phased out of the game, those hatches, the weak points on those hatches, because they were just stupid ideas in the first place. I know there is absolutely no way it holds water for me that you can say, well, they're historically accurate. Excuse me, I don't care about fantasy tanks. They really don't faze me at all. But you're not going to tell me that you can have a Helsing or a freaking Lupus with bacon on the tank and a 12 degrees of gun depression on a rear-mounted turret, 11 degrees rather. You can't have Vindicators and all those kind of things, and then turn around and tell me that you can't have hatches because they're historically inaccurate. It's the same old story. The Type 61's hatch, the hatch on this tank here, the hatch on the Chieftain T95, they're completely over the top. There's no need for them whatsoever. I'd love to see that lowered. If it was lowered, I'd be all over it. I'd think the tank was a real improver. It's not so strong on the turret that you can just sit there and bounce shots. It's certainly tricky and awkward at times. And look, you've got a freaking eagle perched on your turret. Like, how can you not be happy with that? It looks cool. Hey, I really love the way it looks. And you can play it in a variety of roles. It has that typical American playstyle. Like, it is like driving a little fat M48A1 with a bad hatch. It really is. It's exactly what it's like driving it. It's cool. It's not as good as the Patton, but it does its best. It absolutely does its best. Now, view range wise, I was a little disappointed. You are a touch under the other tier 8 mediums. just about 5% under, I think it is, maybe 2.5%. And that's a bit disappointing, but I would have expected it to be a little higher because it is an American medium, and the American mediums generally have much better. See what I mean about how the gun depression actually feels a little bit higher than at 9 degrees? We're having no problems getting these shots off, and we're not having to expose a whole lot. That's that really, really steep, really, really flat upper glacis that slopes down all the way from the back. See how the wedge shape of the tank? So it's like a triangle with the very point of the upper glacis doing the business. It allows you to get shots like this off without really exposing a whole hell of a lot. And your turret at this kind of angle is all kinds of tough to pen. We switch over to AP here in a sec. That 268mm of heat is just overkill there. We try and get one off in AP. Absolutely no problems at all. And there's the hatch. That's basically the hatch that you're looking at. Max rolling 281. Love it. There's another one, and we take a shot to the same hatch. Like it's the Chieftain. I'm trying to pull him back here so that he pops for the Borsig. There's a Borsig behind me. So, final verdict on the tank. Lovely. Great fun to drive. Really enjoyed it. Can highly recommend it to anyone who wants to have a little bit of a different looking vehicle and who enjoys this kind of a playstyle. It's not a hard to find playstyle, but it's a hard to find tank. Would I buy it on my main account? Probably not. It's just a lot of gold to spend, It's a lot of gold to spend. But, I mean, I'd like it. Would I have it before I took another tier 8 premium heavy? Yeah, damn straight. I mean, I'm just about over those. And we actually do get a mastery badge out of this game, despite the fact that we're about to get wrecked. I'm the only tip of the spear. I'm trying to spot still for this Borsig. The M103 went hull down over there. I'm in trouble now. I know I'm in trouble. And then I get lit on fire. Like, we burn out. And not only get lit on fire, but our ammo rack gets damaged, and it was all over there. And the rest of the team carries on and does the business, and we get a winner chicken dinner. But for all that, not unhappy to have driven the tank, and certainly will probably drive it again in platoon or something with my mates. I'd really enjoy that because I do think it's got a lot to offer, and it is a fun vehicle to drive. I'm Bushka. I hope you guys enjoy that one. Look after yourselves, and as always, stay safe on the battlefield. Bye for now.